Good evening. Perhaps the lesson last night brought to your attention the fact that we are dealing in this work with you and with me as individuals. In other words, I, as an individual, have a life to live. I, as an individual, came here on earth, and from that very beginning, and all the way through the rest of this experience until the moment of passing on, and then after that, into and through whatever the next experience may be, I will exist as an individual need, individual identity. Now, somewhere we have come into the belief that our lives, well, let's stay with the example. We'll stay with me, that my life can be influenced by prenatal experience, by home environment, by schools, education, and later personal experience. And in the human picture, that is exactly what seems to happen. Now, it is a strange thing, of course, that no one has ever been able to trace a particular pattern and to know what one's early life and young experience, school and so forth, plays in the development of their lives. In other words, there is no pattern. For instance, you may have heard it said of some criminal sentenced to life or death, well, you can't expect anything else. He was born in the ghetto, his parents had no education, he had no education, and he started out to work for a living early. And this is the inevitable end of that kind of a life. Of course, that isn't true, because for every one like that out of that surrounding, there are 99 have come out of that same surrounding and written their names in the halls of fame. There are more men who have become eligible to membership in the Grand Street Boys in New York than came out of that same neighborhood and ever got to prison. And the Grand Street Boys is an organization of boys who went to school at Grand Street and the Bowery, right at Chinatown, the deepest part of the ghetto, and then found their names inscribed on the halls of fame, either in law, in business, in government, in medicine, in some form of fine, high accomplishment. In exactly the same way, then, we have the boys or girls born into wealth, position, and ending up nothing. And sometimes when that picture is presented to you, it is almost as if that were to be expected, because their parents were too rich or too popular or too something, and they were spoiled. But that's not a pattern either, because there are more boys and girls born in such circumstances who develop into prominent men and women, taking full advantage of their background to bring it into a position of success, if we may call it that. And so it is that there are no patterns. It is not necessarily true that because we were born into poverty and lack of education that we will turn out badly. It is not necessarily true that because we were born into wealth and opportunity that we will turn out well. We must look beyond the circumstances to see why it is that we as individuals form our own destiny. As long as the world looks for patterns, as long as it believes that circumstances make the man, it will look in vain for the solution of life. You can take a man out of the ghetto, but you can't always take the ghetto out of the man. It will be discovered eventually that whatever we are and whatever we become has nothing whatsoever to do with our homes, our environments, our circumstances. That we ourselves as individuals determine the destiny of our lives. It is true that previous existence plays an important part in our destiny, but this only confirms the fact that it is our individual experience that determines where we go and why. In other words, it is folly to say that we are all born equal. There is no equality among us at birth. The only equality is, of course, the equality of opportunity. We may all have an equal opportunity in a country that gives us the freedom to be educated and to find employment or to use inventive skills, arts. There is a certain equality of opportunity, but that is as far as equality goes. Why? Because each one of us, on coming into this world, is the product of what he was before he came into this world. We have all lived from everlasting to everlasting. We all coexist with God since the beginning of time, and we will all coexist with God unto the end of time, for the life of God and the life of man is one life, indivisible, indistinguishable. One infinite life, immortal and eternal. And this is the life we live. Therefore, the way we live this particular 70, 80, 90 years determines in great measure the life that we will lead after we leave this visible scene. Because, and I believe that was said last night, that whereas we will check at the probate court all of the treasure that we have laid up in storehouses, we will sneak past that probate court and take with us the treasures that have been laid up in heaven. In other words, the spiritual treasures, the developed consciousness. This goes with us. You must understand that we do not exist as bodies. We are not bodies, and we do not live in bodies. Those of you who have either been in the classes or who have heard the tapes from those classes in which we have had the experience of searching for ourselves will understand this fully. And because there are so many new students in this class, and because I believe that it will be helpful even to the older ones, I think it would be a good exercise for us now. Close your eyes, because we are on the subject of our individual identity. Close your eyes. Be at peace. And with your eyes closed, look down at your feet. And ask yourself the question, am I down there? Is that me? Are those feet me? Am I those feet? And as you sit back, wait for the answer, it will be evident to you that those feet are yours. Now do not leave the feet until you are convinced, until something within you tells you truly that those feet belong to you, that they are your feet. If it appears to you that this is true, that these are your feet, then you have already seen beyond a doubt that there is a you and feet. That you are not the feet, but that there is a you which possesses these feet and uses them. And so you may go to the knee and go to the waist and go to the chest and search up and down there and see if you can come into agreement with this, that this body is yours. This body is yours. The heart is yours. The arms are yours. Every organ and function in your body belongs to you. And as you go up, you find that you have a brain. And in order to follow with us, you will have to have an answer to the question, am I this brain, or is this brain mine? Does this brain belong to me? Do I function through this brain? Is there a me and brain? Are these eyes my eyes? Are these ears my ears? The Master says, do you have eyes? Do you have ears? Do you believe this? That you have eyes and that you have ears? Or do you believe that you are eyes and you are ears? Is there a you that has ears and has eyes? Is there a you that has a brain? Is there a you that has a body? Now search up and down this body and see if you can find yourself anywhere within its confines. Or if you are compelled to say, no, I cannot find myself in this body. This body is mine. I put it to bed at night and I take it up in the morning. I walk it outdoors. I take it with me wherever I go. I use it for walking. I use it for eating. I use these eyes for seeing. I use these ears for hearing. I never bathe me. I bathe my body. Ah, but are you agreeing with this? Do you perceive this? That there is a you? And that you can say to your feet, walk forward, walk backward, walk to the left, walk to the right. That you can say to your hands, give, receive, lift up, put down. Is there a you with dominion over this body? Now the first point of this exercise is to establish the fact beyond all doubt in your own mind that there is a you, and that you have a body. You may even agree that you have a purse. You have a checkbook. You have clothing. Always there is a you. But not only this, you can give your purse and you can give your clothing, you can give your checks. There is a you which is in dominion, full dominion, over your possessions, and your body now, you see, is one of your possessions. It is not you. It is one of your possessions. It is that which is given to you as an instrument for moving about. But where all of this time are you? Try now to see if you can locate yourself between your feet and your head. If there is any part of your body in which you can find yourself. And of course the answer is no. No, you are not down in those feet or in those knees or in your stomach or in your chest or in your head. You just are not there. The question now comes, where am I? Where am I if I am not where I believed myself to be. I thought I was sitting in this chair, and I find I am not there. My body is, I see it. But I cannot find myself in this chair. I cannot find myself in this body. Where am I? Who am I? What am I? Why am I? This practice, this contemplation of I, or meditation upon the I, when continued for short periods, today, tomorrow, the next day, will always result in one answer. And that answer is, I is invisible, I is incorporeal, I is spiritual, I is not limited to time or space. Once this perception is attained, you have the identity of I. And you will know why you cannot be influenced by circumstances or conditions. You will know why you are the master of your fate and the captain of your ship, because you are an individual identity, an individual consciousness containing within yourself full dominion over your entire life. You will find further that the nature of your identity, of the you that you really are, is God identity. In other words, what God is, I am. You will find that the nature of God is identical with the identity, with the nature of the I that I am. And then you will understand Moses' revelation. I am that I am. Not you are, or he is, or she is. Not that there is a God up above the sky. I am that I am. I am that I am. I am that I am. I am. I am that. And you will know then why the Master gave that as his full and complete revelation to the world. I and my Father are one. Had this been a relationship between Jesus and God, then of course he couldn't have been the way shower for us. Then he could only have looked down on us with pity and said, how sorry I am that you aren't one with our Father, your Father and my Father. But it was impossible for him to say, your Father and my Father, and then not know that this is the relationship he was revealing to the world of his identity, and by virtue of being a way shower, showing us the way to understand our identity. Know ye not that ye are children of God? In other words, even as God is my Father and I am the Son, even so is God your Father and you are the Son. And all that the Father is, you are. All that the Father hath is yours. Then you understand that I of my own self can do nothing. That is, the very moment I cut myself off from that oneness with God, I am as a branch of a tree that is cut off and withereth. And that is why it is a very sad thing sometimes to hear some metaphysicians going around saying, I am God, or I am Spirit. It's sad and tragic, because it is as if a branch of a tree was saying, I am a tree. As Joel, separate and apart from God, I must admit I am nothing, and can do nothing and be nothing. Only in my conscious realization of my oneness with God can I say, God constitutes my being. God is my true identity, and the quality of God and the quantity of God is the quality of my being and the quantity of my being, and therefore, since God is immortal, I am immortal. Since God is eternal, I am eternal. Since God is infinite, I am infinite by virtue of my oneness with God. For any human being even to claim not only that they're God, but even that they're the Son of God or even spiritual, is mockery of truth. Unless in the same breath they are realizing that this can only be true because of my relationship with God, because of my oneness with God, and all that the Godhead is flowing into expression as my individual being. Now do you see that I cannot be subject to environment, I cannot be subject to lack of education, I cannot be subject to what my neighbor thinks or does, for I and my Father are one. And what I see the Father do, that I do. Not what I see my neighbor do, and not what my parents did before me, but what I see the Father do. This I do, for I and the Father are one. And the infinite nature of God's being constitutes the infinity of my individual being. Therefore, every soldier has a baton in his knapsack, says Napoleon, which we can interpret to mean that the lowliest and the least of us has the crown of divine sonship locked up within us. If so, we recognize it and recognize its source. You see, if you were sitting in a rubber boat out in the middle of the ocean and either had no checkbook with you or it wasn't any good, and no supermarkets around, there would still be a demonstration for you to make, unless you want to give up and jump into the ocean. And that demonstration is here where I am fulfillment is. The place whereon I stand is holy ground. For all that the Father is, I am, and all that the Father hath is mine. And it doesn't say that you have to be close to the corner delicatessen store. It says that the place where I find myself, even if I make my bed in hell, thou art there. Even if I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, thou art there. Eternal life, eternal harmony, eternal being. But it is only demonstrated by those who consciously know this truth. And that is why in the experience of Rickenbacker, all were saved by one man. The others would have perished without him. But he alone in that boat knew his true identity and was able to sit with folded arms and inwardly, quietly, peacefully realize, here where I am, God is. And demonstrated it for himself and for his companions, even though they didn't know that he knew the secret of his identity. Rickenbacker has proved himself to be almost indestructible only by knowing the truth, and he knows it. Now, every one of us has a life to live. Each one of us at some time or other is blaming others for our lack of demonstration, or perhaps giving too much credit to others for our demonstration. The truth is, no one could give us more than we can accept. And on the other hand, no one can deprive us of anything once we know, consciously know, the truth of our identity. Once you begin to understand that this is not you, this is yours, you begin to have dominion over it. You begin to understand that it cannot do what you do not instruct it to do, what you do not permit it to do. And this isn't true only of your body, it's true of your mind. The most common thing that I hear is that people cannot control their thoughts, or their thoughts run away with them, or they cannot make their minds stop the merry-go-round, but it isn't true. It is only the fact that they have not established their identity and realize that I am not the mind is mine. It is an instrument given to me of God. And just as this body is mine, so is this mind mine. And I do govern the mind and the body. I do govern its thoughts. And I can say the thoughts thus far and no further. I can say the thoughts, move on, get thee behind me, Satan. And I can open my mind to the Father and be the instrument for the flow. Not of Joel's thoughts, my thoughts, which are higher than Joel's thoughts. But I must first put Joel's thoughts out of the way and agree that I'm not interested in them, and then open myself. Thy ways are not my ways, thy thoughts are not my thoughts, but let us now come together where thy thoughts become my thoughts. Let thy thoughts find outlet through me, and then truth may flow. Truth can't flow from Joel. Truth has to flow from the Father, which is truth itself, through us as instruments. We can pass it on one to another. We cannot create it. We cannot make it up. None of the most brilliant minds in the world has ever invented a truth or created a truth. It can't be done. Truth is, and truth is from everlasting to everlasting, and we, once we understand that the source of truth is closer to us than breathing, nearer than hands and feet, we can stop our human thinking, material thinking, sensual thinking, and we can say, get out. Let's make room here for the Father. And then as we inwardly realize, and remember this, You don't have to have necessarily a quiet place for this to take place in. You don't have to retire to a mountain. You don't have to retire to a temple. Oh no. No. Wherever you are in a boiler factory is perfectly all right. You can make room within yourself for it. All writers have to learn to concentrate, and some have to do it in newspaper plants. And those are noisy places. Don't forget it. We can't all be in quiet corners, and sometimes the quiet corner defeats our purpose. Sometimes the very jangle and noise of the world outside gives us an incentive to shut ourselves off and get into an area of consciousness within ourselves. And then we find out that neither time nor place can stop the flow of inspiration from within our being. Personally, I have found this a very strange thing too. I don't know whether others have. I have found that the flow of inspiration is almost continuous when flying in the air. It's been a very strange experience, but I rarely have made a trip by plane that hasn't resulted in some very wonderful inspiration flowing. Whether that the situation or whatever it is that has to do with it, I don't know. But you know, there's lots of noise up there too. Whatever it is, though, I have had that experience. But let us remember this. I. Never hesitate to meditate on the subject of I, as long as you're not going to get conceited and egotistical. If you find yourself doing that and starting to flatter yourself about that I, stop your meditation. You're in danger. Because when you rightly understand the I, you are speaking of God, and you should be speaking as if you were on bended knees. I in the midst of me is mighty. I am the bread and the wine and the water. Yes, if I am the bread and the wine and the water, if I am the resurrection and the life, I embody within myself everything necessary to my unfoldment. I am the food, the staff, the rod. I am the discipline. I am that which restores the lost years of the locust. The lost years of the locust are restored to me because stored up within the I that I am is the quality of resurrection, or the activity of resurrection. I embody within myself. Right now I'm thinking of the Master. The Master who, while he was walking on the earth, said, I am come to heal the sick, raise the dead, open the eyes of the blind, open the ears of the deaf. And think of it that in that I, which I am, is embodied the Master. God the Father and God the Son is one, and therefore that which comes to earth to heal the sick, to raise the dead, to feed the hungry, to restore the lost years of the locust, is embodied in the I that I am. I do not have to go to my neighbor. I do not have to go back into time or space. I do not have to depend on man whose breath is in his nostril, for something is embodied in the I that I am, which we call the Master. Jesus lived 2,000 years ago, but Christ was before Abraham, and Christ says, I will never leave thee nor forsake thee, and therefore I is that which never leaves us nor forsakes us. Try to get rid of I. Try to get rid of I. And you will find the impossibility of it. That I is closer to you than breathing, nearer than hands and feet, but you must understand that that I embodies the Christ, the Spirit of God, the Son of God, the Resurrector, and contains your food, clothing, housing, unto eternity, and therefore open out a way that this imprisoned splendor may escape. It is bottled up within you. It is bottled up within the I that I am. And the secret of life is all bound up in that. That is why the Greek, more than 2,000 years ago, could say, "O man, learn thyself, know thyself, and you will know God." Why? Because I am the Father and I am the Son, one. All that the Father is, I am. Before Abraham was, I was included in me. And I am given this body, and I am given this mind, and I can sit back in back of the body and in back of the mind. This is the meaning of omnipresence. I am here, and I am there, and I am everywhere. And I am where you are. This is the secret of absent healing. In absent healing, it is not only unnecessary to send a thought to anyone, but it ranks along with other things that are foolishness, because it isn't the thoughts of man that heal. So if you could project all the good thoughts in the world, you wouldn't heal anybody with them. You might hypnotize them for a little while or suggestionize them, but it wouldn't be lasting. Healing power is not in the human thought that is projected. Healing comes from the consciousness which I am. And that I am is where you are. Omnipresent, where you are. It doesn't have to go from here to there. It doesn't have to be sent from here to there. It is where I am. It is the I am that I am, and it is where you are. I am not confined to a body. I am not confined to a room. And I am anywhere you are at any time. And I know it, and have seen it, and have demonstrated it. I am not confined to body, and I am where you are. I was with you before Abraham was. I will be with you unto the end of the world, and what happens to Joe won't make any difference. I will still be there. This can only reveal itself to you reasonably through your meditation upon the I. Because declaring it to you is not revealing it to you. The revelation of it comes in meditation. Then the actual awareness of I takes place, and the actual awareness of the identity of I, and then the experience of omnipresence. This is the experience which takes place and reveals to you what Walt Whitman revealed, that he was in the blade of grass, that he was in that woman walking on the street, across the street, that he was in the tree. What every mystic has experienced, that they look out from trees and see the world, they look up to the sky and see themselves looking down at themselves. Look up from the bottom of the ocean to see themselves looking down at themselves from on the sea. Because I fills all space. I am that I am. I am that I am. And that I is God fulfilling itself as the individual life of my being, as the individual mind of my being. Therefore, I the Father and I the Son are one. And where God is, I am, and where I am, God is. And that makes me omnipresent. And that makes the consciousness which I am omnipotent, not by virtue of Joel, but by virtue of God constituting Joel. And so it is. In Emerson's day, they thought that writers had to have brain fever by the time they were 70. They used up all of the strength and all of the energy giving birth to those wonderful ideas. Writers today know that there is no excuse for burning out, no excuse for being used up, no excuse whatsoever for being tired, except momentarily after much labor, but only momentarily. Why? Because a writer isn't creating anything. A writer has opened their consciousness to let God's ideas flow through. Let the Father be made manifest as the Son. And that's all there is to it, is to open consciousness and let the ideas which already exist, complete and perfect in divine consciousness, appear as the consciousness, the inspiration of the individual. Certainly, the atheistic writer, who thinks that he's a great creator, with great capacities for imagination and thought, of course, by the time he's brought out a few stories, he's all used up and weary. Not so once you begin to understand the nature of your being. You will understand that infinity is your capacity. Infinity. No end to it whatsoever. No end to it whatsoever. Only your capacity to open your soul and let the soul of God flow as your individual soul. Realize that the I, which is the bread, the meat, the wine, the water, is the I of your being, the I that will never leave you nor forsake you. Never, never, never. And never is a long, long time. No. If we live on the life we received at birth and the little that we draw out of our food and drink, I do not wonder that we're withered by the time we're 80 years and 10. But if we have learned that man shall not live by bread alone, that he is not deriving his life and energy and health merely from the food he eats or the air he breathes, but that there is a transcendental something feeding, satisfying, completing, inspiring, and then learns that the nature of that is I. that which is closer to me than breathing. The I that I am, is feeding me. Oh, of course we will eat some food. Of course we will take some rest. Of course we will enjoy some pleasures. But we will not live by those. We will live by the I that I am. And that I is God. And it is the source of all that Joel is. We're using Joel only as an example, for always remember that I'm substituting my name just because it's mine. But you are using your name where I'm using Joel. And find that the I that I am is Mary, Bill, and Robert. And that you are fed from that source, that wellspring of life everlasting. In God the substance of all form, you say that the greatest mystic of all time was John, the beloved disciple. And then is the question, greater than Jesus? Well, that's one of those questions that will probably never be resolved on earth, because unless we find some more manuscripts, I don't know whether we'll know whether Jesus actually spoke the words that were as in John, or whether John received it from Christ. We do know this. We know the message that John gave, and it is the greatest mystical message that has ever been revealed to the world. If Jesus had more of it than John, then he was greater than John. But I don't know that. And this question about blaspheming against the Father and so forth, I can't answer that either. I think that's a matter of opinion. We blaspheme our neighbor when we judge him by appearances, that's true. We sin against God whenever we accept two powers, that's true. But what is the sin against the Holy Ghost? I don't know that it's anything different than those things. Just perhaps never entered my mind, so I can't answer. And here we have a job for all of us. We have a lost purse with some very important things in it. So in your meditations tonight, let's find out that purses are not material. And being spiritual, they can't be lost. Being spiritual, they can't get out of the consciousness of the individual being, which I am. And there we have a practical statement about that I that I am. Is the I that I am a different I than the I of the finder? Or is it the same I? And therefore, the purse is safe in the possession of I. The I that I am, which is the I that you are. All is well. This is a question about a book. And I can't remember the book, and I can't tell you its name. I don't even remember its subject. This is asking to clarify the subject of healings. I do not seem able to reconcile the following. It seemed to me Lease and Tate stressed the need for more and better healing work to be done, for more who are willing to undertake healing work. And then in the art of spiritual healing it says no one should go into this spiritual ministry unless God takes him by the nape of the neck and pushes him into it. And even then, if he can resist the call, he should do so. And then again, whenever anyone asks for help, You should be willing to give the very best treatment you know how to give. Now, the answer to this is this. When I said no one should go into the spiritual ministry, I was talking about going into the spiritual ministry as a practice, as a teacher, as anything that has to do with going professionally into this ministry. And I meant every word of it, and I mean it more and more each day. No one should go into the public ministry. No one should set themselves up on a platform. No one should do anything that puts them into the public spiritual activity unless God has made it so clear that you'll either do it or else. Because until such time, the student isn't ready for the things that happen when one goes into a public ministry. Now, the proof of all this you can find in the thousands who have gone into it and gone out of it. Those who for brief periods have either been practitioners or leaders or teachers or lecturers and then have fallen by the wayside. This is a work not for a person to go into. This is a work to be called into. Now, when you are called and you have the absolute assurance that God goes with you every step of the way, even then when you go in, be prepared for a lot of trouble, because you're going to get it, whether you're prepared for it or not. The moment you go out into the human world with a spiritual message, it is as if you were to bring the wrath of heaven or hell down on you. And it is a difficult work. However, it is one that the Master had to see through even to the cross. And so did the disciples have to see it through. Persecution, imprisonment, death. When the call comes, you can't refuse. But be sure it's a call. Now this differs entirely from these other statements. As a student, if you understand this message, you should be called on almost from the beginning for help of one kind or another. It may be comfort, it may be healing, it may be to help someone with supply or inspiration, and you must be prepared to give it. That's a far, far cry from going out into the world on a public platform. It's a far cry from demonstrating that you can heal the multitudes and feed the multitudes. And like Paul, always remember that 7 churches couldn't support one Paul. One Paul could support 7 churches. And when you go into this ministry, don't you believe for a minute that there are any churches going to support you, or patients or students. Be certain that before you're through, you're going to prove that you can support them. And if you can't, you haven't got what they are looking for. For they are looking for a consciousness imbued with the Spirit of God. And when you are a teacher, you can't say to your patient or student, you must give me money, you must take care of me. As a spiritual teacher, it'll be your function to take care of them. Our resting period.